My name is Dan Hessey, and I'm here with Julie DuBose, the author of Effortless Beauty. Photography is an expression of eye, mind, and heart. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you.
So it must be exciting to publish this wonderful book.
It is exciting.
Yeah, I've been reading it, and are you ready for some praise?
Absolutely.
The photographs are really beautiful, and the writing is extraordinary, really clear. And when I read it, I was inspired to interview you so you could share a little bit of what's in the book and your own experience. And I wanted to start with a sort of waking up. Can you remember first time you took a photograph and experienced something, beyond habit? When was it that you sort of first noticed that this could be an avenue for awareness?
Probably in 1997, I would say. I didn't even have a camera.
Mm-hmm.
And then I knew Michael, and Michael was teaching this, and probably very early on in our friendship, he showed me an image slideshow of all of his various current Miksang images, and I did immediately recognize that I saw in this way. I understood it. I think it was familiar to me. And probably a year later or so, I took my first class, and it just seemed very accessible, and I felt like I could do it. It seemed very ordinary in some sense, just noticing your world and photographing what you were seeing. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have to be anything special to do it, which I really liked that. That seemed to be a good indicator I might enjoy myself.
Yeah.
And so I just started taking photographs all the time. I had my camera with me around the house, and I had 2 young children, and I was at home a lot during the day. And I found it very accessible.
So it's been sort of a companion for you in your life for a long time now.
Mm-hmm. It really has.
Yeah. So in the title of the book, it says, photography is an expression of eye, mind, and heart. And I thought that was, very concise. So say something sort of in terms of your experiential quality of taking a picture. If you say mind, what would that part be?
The mind part in this case is, depending on your mind, of course,
Yeah.
is the mind that notices and sees. So, for instance, I'm looking at you, and my mind is registering that I'm seeing Dan Hessey sitting in front of me. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that there's much more going on than that, but it is sort of the mind that is functioning to label and process the experience of visual stimulation or phenomena. Mm-hmm. So that's the mind part. Mm-hmm. And the eye is just an organ. It's like a camera, it just sees. And the eye just sees. That's what it does. Mm-hmm. The visual sense of sight. And heart is the sense of being fully present and participating fully in the experience of seeing. So it's not just our usual way of seeing where we just see, label, and move on. Mm-hmm. Or possibly look further. It also means that you bring all of yourself to the present moment, and you're fully available rather than distracted.
Mm. When I look at your photographs, I sort of feel like there's a trapdoor quality to a world that I don't let myself see as much. They're so many of your photographs are of very ordinary situations that, it's not like you're seeing some mountain peak you've never been to. You're seeing parts of your world you see every day. But this combination of eye, mind, and heart seems to be a very potent sort of chemical compound.
It's very potent, yes. It's way more potent than our normal amount of attention that we have available. Mm-hmm. We have such a small percentage of our mental attention that's focused at any given time on anything that we see. Mm-hmm. So if you learn how to bring them together so that the eye is looking through the the mind and the eye are in a link like a laser. And I actually mentioned the word laser.
Yes.
The vividness and intensity of what's seen is beyond what we normally experience. And it can make your experience of seeing your world, or my world, so poignant, so direct, so fresh that it's just wakes me up, takes me out of anything I'm thinking about or anything I'd like to do or anything I'm unhappy about. Just cuts right through it like a laser.
It reminds me a little bit of meditative experience, doing shamatha practice or other kinds of meditation, that there's some sort of coming to a more simple way, direct way of experiencing your sense perceptions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it related to, is this way of seeing related to your meditation practice?
Very much so, I would say, except that rather than sitting on a cushion in a special situation, like your shrine room or whatever kind of place that you have established for your meditation practice, that you carved outside of your life, that you can go and recharge and refresh. It's kind of like you develop the ability to do it on the spot, moment by moment.
So that's quite thrilling, and you're sort of using this medium of photography as a way of engaging the wider world meditatively.
Yes, although I wouldn't put that kind of label on top of it.
Oh, that's really interesting. Tell me why. That's very important. Yeah.
Because the dividing line between meditation and post-meditation actually is not there. It dissolves in this practice, so that what you do is you work to develop your stability of being in the present moment, your steady mind. And you can't really have any kind of fresh perceptions unless you're open and available, first of all. So, like, what does that mean? And I'm getting to the meditation part of this. I'm sort of working my way.
This is really important.
What does that mean? It means that you have an intention to connect with your world, just in an ordinary way. We're not talking about going extraordinary places, although that may happen, but much more it's about when you wake up in the morning, do you notice the sun coming in the window and illuminating your sheets? I've got a lot of shots of sheets, I can tell you, and pillows. So you want to do that. So you're fundamentally, you make yourself available. And without actually having a mind that can rest, you have a perception that you can rest with that and just hang out with it and understand it. Like, what is it? What is it? What are you looking at? Is it, where does it start? Where does it end? What are its qualities? Can you feel it? You can't do any of that unless you have the ability to be still. So you have the intention to see, and you have the ability to be still. And that's how you can actually do this. If you don't have stillness, you need to work on it so you do get more stillness, so that you are able to allow your perceptions to interrupt the stream of your constant mind chatter, and notice that stream has been interrupted. Pay attention to that, recognize it when it happens, and then look at the source of the stopping of the mind chatter and connect with it. And then just by doing that over and over again, and this is where it's like meditation, you notice that you're thinking and you just let it go. And in this, you notice that your mind has been stopped, and you come and you rest with the perception. If you notice that your mind has drifted away, you come back. If you have a perception, then you need to actually hang out with it. And if you get distracted by doubts or, that would be better, or that would make a better photograph, or my friends aren't going to like this, so I'm not, all that. If you lose the stream of the perception and all of that, if you can't find your way back to it again, then you might as well walk away, because that's where the freshness is. And you start to become aware of how our mind is always pulling us away. It always has the impulse to go out and to expand and to label and to think. And we're always separating ourselves from our experience that way.
We were talking about, where the inspiration for a photograph comes from in your way of unconstructed reality. And in your book you said that you love what is in front of us, like visitors to another culture. We realize what we see is a river of life and feeling. And that seems so dynamic and alive to me.
Well, when you're connecting with what's around you and you're just available, you do get a sense of all kinds of levels of sensory perception, not just visual. Mm-hmm. You start to feel the place. Your body is involved. So there is this a full-bodied experience of perception. Often photographers, I think, tend to think of it as a sort of a mental application of mind. And truly, I think when you're on the earth and you're walking around in your physical body, you have so many sensations that are registering about what your experience is. And such a big part of that is your visual experience. Like if you see something that's threatening, your body immediately registers a response. A lot of times we ignore these, or if we're in a hurry, we do. But if we're really mindful and we're just walking along and looking at our world, it does start, and because we have no agenda. We aren't looking for anything particular. We're not looking for any kind of thing that we want to photograph that we may believe would make a great image to show our friends and family. We have no agenda. So we're not really editing so much what we're saying. We're just kind of experiencing it. And then within that, if something really stops us, at that point, we might want to explore that further, experience that more deeply, connect to it more specifically. But yes, it is. It's like a river of life and energy that flows.
Yes, I was very interested in this idea of opening up to that river, but nonetheless, without looking for something specific, having to attune ourselves to our inspiration, so we're actually calibrated or open to our inspiration. So we're not really trying to attune ourselves to seeing some specific thing, but we're attuning ourselves to being open.
Attuning is an interesting word. I think that's a good word. We say things like calibrating your intention so that you have some clarity. You know, this is really true. If you're out looking for color, we do this all the time because it's mind-blowing. And everybody is looking for color. Then they see color. Then you say, look for the color blue. Then they see the color blue. You see the color red. Then you see the color red. All we have to do is turn the dial. And it's very potent. So when we set the intention to see, which we do that in assignments in our courses. We give people assignments and we say, okay, here's where you want to calibrate your intention. And so in the beginning you do that especially. It's very important to set your intention. And then at some point it starts to become part of who you are, that you're available to see. And then the intention just becomes incorporated.
It must be slightly invasive when you can't keep your little bubble around you very well if you're available to see.
Well, that's very true. Yes, people will come up and talk to you all the time, and they're curious about what you're doing and what you're shooting, and so much for little bubbles.
And when you set your intention, it's almost like you said a mousetrap, isn't it? You said unconditioned perception comes out of nowhere, that you're not actually making it up, that it comes to you. So you're not looking for a specific thing, but how does that dynamic work between your calibrating your intention and then the sense of unconditioned perception coming to you?
Well, it is kind of a great magical mystery in a way.
Yeah.
Because when you're really available and you're really open, your world does come to you. Our world does come to us. What we could never imagine what comes. Once we get out of the way and we resist the impulse to label what we're seeing and I hope we talk about that in a little while, because that so narrows the possibilities for interaction when we have walls erected about what we will and will not see. And there's all kinds of those kinds of things that we've developed over our lifetimes. So once you remove all of that and you're just available, then there is lots of room for connecting with various phenomena in your environment.
Actually pick a picture from your book, and you can talk maybe a little bit about what kind of journey of it coming to find you you might have experienced. This is a beautiful picture of a red flower against a turquoise wall with a spiky stem coming up.
That's a really, who's not going to see that? I was available and I saw it, but it's like a magnet. It's so vivid, the vivid orange against the turquoise wall. It was just stunning.
And so you didn't think to yourself, well, that's too obvious. There's such a color contrast. It's not, you're just willing to just take it as it was.
It's a lot more pleasurable and fun to take things as they are than to struggle with what they're not.
Let's look at another one that has a different quality. This is almost, this one here, which looks like a snowbank. It's almost a picture, and with one little stick coming out, it's almost a picture of nothing compared to the flower. It doesn't have any big drama in the same way. How did this feel when you?
The first thing I want to say is that there is a very wide range of visual experiences available to us, wider than, and in any courses, I talk about it in my book. There's a whole range of experience that we may never have experienced ever. Our dream of experience becomes available to us when we really develop the discipline to stay present and open wherever we are. And it's true that this particular picture is not dramatic. However, it's extremely subtle and so lovely. The tonalities of gray, the gentle quality of the outline of the snowbank on the gray water that's got little patches of very soft light. And we all know what it's like to be out in the snow in wintertime and how subtle and muted everything is, and the single stick protruding, it just says it all. It's just a moment in time, and we experience the moments like this all the time, but we don't ever really think they have any. Why would we take a picture of that? It's not exciting, but it's so much part of our lives, and it's actually expresses so much of our experience.
Well, what's interesting about the contrast between those two pictures is that that you're setting your intention, but there's a tremendously wide palette of things that can resonate with that intention. It's not limited, and I'd like to talk a little bit about how it is that we generally limit. What is it that limits our ability to see with our heart?
Well, there's two aspects. I would start with what is it that limits what we see, and then we'll talk about the heart part, because that's an additional level of protectedness that we put around ourselves. The first thing, the reason that we don't see a lot is because we've developed a whole filtration system for our experience. So, some of that's useful. It helps in navigating the world and understanding dangers and threats and avoiding unpleasant situations and recognizing pleasant situations. But fundamentally, we get to the point where immediately we see situations as pleasurable, unpleasurable, are not worth noticing, are attractive, not attractive, and downright yucky, So that's the fundamental thing that we've got. And we've got levels of complexity that develop that. the reason why, the context, the previous experience, all of it, especially if we're really intelligent by conventional means, we have basically developed a very witty and crafty and pretty impregnable defense system that no one can penetrate. And then we're considered successful at what we do.
No one, including us,
No one, including us,
can penetrate it.
Well, I'm afraid it pretty much leaves us behind as well, because what is sort of beneath all of that is not able to contribute to our experience, which is sort of the fundamental situation that we really can lose touch with so easily. Just because we don't really know, we can get started on this because it's such a deep subject, but you know, I say this a lot, and I think it really sums it up. It's like we don't even experience our experience. So who is experiencing our experience? Our idea of who we are is who's doing the experiencing. We don't actually have a direct experience anymore of what we like. We go into a store, we don't even know what we like. But deeper wisdom would be the kind of wisdom, I do mention this in my book, is when we're originally experiencing the relationship of things. How our world looks, how we navigate our world in terms of placement and the feeling of situations and recognizing feeling tones and knowing whether we resonate with someone or we don't. All of those things are based on some kind of fundamental, who are we as human beings, and some kind of deep sense of knowing, not thinking, but knowing our place in a deep sense. Where are our bearings? Where's our magnetic north? All of these things that people who have a lot of, and there are people like this in the world who just know. And they're not going to let someone tell them otherwise because they don't even want to hear it. It's like, no, that doesn't make sense to me. That's not my experience.
So this intention allows you to uncover, as you say in your book, natural wisdom that's already there. And we were talking before a little bit about what gets in the way of seeing that. And I always thought art is a language. You learn the subjects and the objects and the verbs, artistically speaking, and you get good at it. You learn the scales and, you become a competent artist. And this sounds much more spontaneous than that.
And arts are like that. I mean, you do learn how to use the technique and the medium to express. And at some point, you transcend the medium altogether. And then what's coming forth is your unique expression through that medium. In this case, because of digital photography, which has really changed everything. I mean, anyone can learn how to take excellent pictures with just a minimum of knowledge, which means that basically it's all about expression. So then the question is, what do you want to express?
Yeah. Is it you who's expressing it?
Well, I'm the one who's doing the seeing, and I'm the one who's deciding if I want it and doing the understanding of it. It's very deliberate. And you have to be deliberate, because if you're not, you'll be vague. And if you're vague, then you don't know what you saw, and you're expressing something you don't even know what it was, and it's not going to be fresh. Because as soon as you pull back and you're uncertain, then you lose confidence in it, and you lose the thread of the freshness, and you're thinking about it. As soon as you pull off center, you start to think. That's what we do. Well, what was that? Did I even like that? Was it green or was it blue? I mean, you don't know. So then you may just wing it and say, "All right, I'm going to shoot this anyway." But when you look at it, you won't recognize it.
It doesn't. So there really is a quality of bringing your whole. You said here your full-bodied sensation to the process. That it's kind of a gutsy process. It sounds to me.
It's everything. It's clarity of experience, clarity of understanding, and clarity of expression. So there's nothing haphazard about it. And if you leave one part out, if you leave your mind out and it's a body experience, well, that's not going to communicate. If you just see something and you're stopped by it, but you don't really understand it, that's not going to communicate. Interestingly, if you really feel it full-bodied and you really experience it visually and understand it, and you've really connected to it, and you don't allow any second thoughts or qualifications to penetrate that fresh continuity with your perception, then with photos in my book, there's nothing going on. I don't have a point of view. I'm not trying to say, well, this is my daughter and isn't she so sweet? I don't need to, because if I'm feeling, oh, I love my daughter and here she is, you're going to feel it. You're not going to think, oh, Julie's doing her daughter thing. You're actually going to experience what I experienced, because it's all there.
That's interesting. You talked in your book something that really provoked me, that I found extremely powerful. You say, in order to express the simplicity without any elaboration, which is, I think, what you were just saying, that you're not laying your story about your daughter on the picture, but you're letting it stand for itself. There are two things you need to know: that you said that you're good enough, that we're good enough, and that the world presents itself completely. And that's an amazing way to meet the world, isn't it?
Certainly is, yeah.
Because usually we, as someone taking a picture or trying to make art, we feel inadequate, or I do.
I did, for sure. I didn't have any confidence artistically in myself. I knew I could see, which is great, because we all know we can see. We've been doing it our whole lives. So what we have to do is we have to develop confidence that we can recognize something fresh. We have a taste for it, and maybe we've seen things that are fresh, or in my case, I saw Michael's photographs and it woke the whole thing up. It was sort of there, and I recognized it. So we have to develop some sense of, how do we know when it's fresh and when it's not? This is the big question. How do we know when it's really fresh, or when we're just fooling ourselves?
Well, let me ask you a question then, based on that. How do we know when it's fresh, and how do we know when we're fooling ourselves?
Well, when it's fresh, first of all, you can feel that it's fresh. You can feel the quality of it because it stops your mind. Looking at an image that's fresh stops your mind. And you know it's fresh when you see it, because it stops your mind. It comes out of the blue. It's not based on any idea that you had or anything you were looking to see. It just kind of manifests out of nowhere. You couldn't have thought it up.
When I'm walking around every day, it seems like a three-ring circus to me. There's so many things going on at once. And one of the things you talked about in your book was that when you really touch the moment, you're expressing a sense of simplicity with no elaboration. And how does that sense of everything happening at once focus itself or simplify itself?
That's a really good question. And I think it's at the base. It's the fundamental thing that we start with in this practice and in this particular approach to seeing, is to learn how to just see one thing at a time in each moment. It's to simplify how we see, so that instead of combining a bunch of stuff together, and we do exercises and assignments for this, we really simplify what our intention is of what we see. And then so we start to experience mind and eye on one thing, not a thing necessarily. In this case, it's color, or some kind of just color, no, seeing color. Very simple, so that we start to learn what it feels like when the eye and mind are synchronized. The eye and the mind come together on color. So we channel our intention to see color, they come together just like that, and we start to experience everything pulling together and being unified. And that unison we're starting to attune ourselves to just one frequency, everything together. And that's what brings the immediacy and the vividness to our images. That one thing, everything vibrating together.
So I'm looking at your face, and I see there's a background in your hair, and then I say, okay, I'm going to just relax and see the blueness of your eyes. And then, of course, the slight pink quality of the face starts to be an adornment of the eyes. And this thing the image simplifies or becomes So it's almost like you find a little key, something that allows you to relax into simplicity. Is that right?
Well, it may just be, if my eyes are very blue, that may just be the first thing that you're magnetized by. But the more you develop the ability to see in a simple way, then the more you develop the ability to see my entire face all at once very clearly. Until you develop the ability to simplify, you can't see the whole thing at all. You gloss it. You say Julie's face, and off you go. But if you really hang out and you really look at me and see the individual parts and get very used to simplifying how you see, then you start to be able to see a lot very quickly, and your field of vision opens up, and you can photograph things that you couldn't even see before. So that's where you start with simplifying.
So you're not simplifying what you're seeing, you're simplifying your seeing itself.
Exactly. We are always working with our minds. We're not trying to change the environment or make it some way so that we can see it. It's always we're working with our ability.
So there's a lot of trust in our own ability. In your book you said that to express that simplicity we have to have confidence that we're good enough, and then that the world will present itself completely to us.
And it's a reciprocal relationship, definitely. The confidence that we're good enough comes from sort of recognizing our innate ability to see in this way. And the more we do it, the more we realize that we're able to open up and then the discovery of the world as it is, it blows our thoughts out of the water. And when our thoughts become weaker and there's holes in our projections, then we start to experience the going out and the coming in and the connecting, and it's very, very deeply affects us. And the more we have that kind of genuine experience that's not made up or created from some idea that's outside of our realm of control, we start to experience a sense of gratitude, appreciation, and there's this flow, and our heart starts to open up, and we start to say, this is who we really are. I thought this, and it wasn't even true. Reality doesn't look like that. Reality looks like this. So then you start to realize you're genuine, you're wholesome, you have a heart, you can connect. You don't have to be shut off. You don't have to be worse than everybody else. Poverty stricken. You have all you need. All you have to do is open up.
So you talk about, you just said, if I heard you right, you're saying sometimes what you're seeing is fleeting, and sometimes actually it's not particularly fleeting. But you did talk about abandoning mental restlessness, that there's a stability of genuineness. So in the face of things that are fleeting and not fleeting, there is a kind of stability that's happening in terms of being present for it.
That's right. It's really not about the phenomena. It's really about the state of mind, our state of mind, which is you want it to be steady and still and present and paying attention and not subject to getting thrown off. And the way you develop that is by, first of all, when you start to realize that there is actually a world beyond what I want and what I like and what I dislike. Once you start to realize that, and you start to realize that your seamless world of what you like is got holes in it, because the perceptions are poking holes. And you're also working with a discipline of making yourself available.
Through the intention.
Through the intention. So it's going back and forth and through the process, and it goes all the way through the experience of seeing. You have a perception, you stop, you understand the perception, you keep having thoughts, you keep coming back, you keep letting them go, you keep coming back, you keep looking for the continuity of the perception, all the way through to when it comes up in your computer screen and you're looking at it again. Same thing. You don't start thinking, how can I make this better? How can I add post-processing to this to make the color richer so everyone will like it more? All that is the same thing. Thoughts. Back to the perception. You stay with the perception. That's the only way you can make sure that its expression maintains that freshness. We are developing the discipline of being able to recognize freshness.
Which is already there.
It's always been there, but you know how we can get lost. We're not really sure. How do we develop confidence? And we do that through discipline. And the more we're able to do it, the more confidence we have that we can do it. And the more we stay with our genuineness of wanting to be fresh, the more we develop that sense of confidence that it is fresh, then the better we feel about the whole thing. And it's like at some point you think when you're not doing this, before you're doing this, who cares really? What difference does it make? Because you don't know anything else. But so your basic allegiance is nowhere. It's not towards fresh. Maybe it's towards how clever you can be. What a cool photograph you can take. You can edit it in ways nobody ever thought imaginable. You can express something no one's ever seen.
But I want to push back a little bit on something, because I've heard you say quite a bit in different ways that the thoughts are what's in the way. And one of the things I noticed about your book is how beautifully you've expressed this journey in language. That it's a book that's not just made up of images, but it's a book written by someone who's thought very deeply about how to use thoughts and language to express this journey. So maybe we can talk about the other side of language and thoughts, of how it can support this journey, and how language works when it actually obstructs our fresh sight, and how it supports the journey.
Thoughts only get in the way if we let them get in the way. I mean, we're always going to have thoughts. And we have language because we communicate, so thoughts are always coming up. The main thing is you don't have to follow them where they go. You don't have to entertain them or develop them. You just, in this particular practice, you just stay with the perception. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to entertain the thoughts. And in terms of language and using language, in this case, they point to an experience. And there's a lot of books, especially in poetry, and really fine books that describe experience. And they limit, and I think that's what I was going for with this book. Rather than to talk conceptually about non-conceptual experience, I felt it would be much more helpful to people who are actually doing this if I pointed to the experiences they were having and described those in helpful terms, so that we could actually, and this is what we do when we look at each other's images. We don't say, well, that reminds me of, and boy, if my mother could see me now, and all that kind of stuff. We talk about the experience of seeing and the experience of experiencing our seeing, like it's so soft, it's just so delicate, it's so elegant. We use terms and metaphors to describe the experience of seeing, and somehow it works because we know what each other is. We're describing an experience, which is poetry in a way. I've really worked to describe the inside of practicing this, of doing it, the experience of it. And what that's like, rather than talking about it from outside of it. Well, why would I want to talk about the experience of being outside of this when the real challenge and the path of it all together is stepping into the experience instead of pulling away and objectifying it, which is what we normally do.
Sometimes that inner experience was pretty dramatic. There was one point where you're talking about sort of like a thunderclap or a lightning bolt, that you step into a moment, sort of a timeless moment beyond the ordinary, and you can see why people are shy, because that really captures you, doesn't it?
Well, anything sudden and shocking is going to be disorienting.
That's right.
And that kind of takes us right out. It just ejects us right out of our comfort zone. So yeah, this takes a certain amount of bravado to do this, for sure.
I love that word, bravado. That's great. So Do you find that your formal meditation practice, sitting on a ganda, and this have I would guess that there's a powerful conversation between those two kinds of practice?
Well, they're really pretty much the same. I would say for me, I don't really experience a big difference, especially when I go out with my camera to see it. I'm just walking around.
Mm.
There's nothing happening in my mind.
Mm.
And sometimes there is, just like when I'm sitting on my cushion. Sometimes things come up. Sometimes there's more things than others, but fundamentally when I settle down and I pay attention and I get stopped, the same thing happens. I just lose all sense of me in a way. It becomes a fairly non-dual situation in the best of times where myself and my perception are just there, and I'm hanging out with it and looking at it and appreciating it. And it's an engaged more than, say, just sitting on my cushion. It's
more active.
It's more active, and I'm not sure that it's fundamentally different in a way, but you're also, but when you're connecting with what you see, you're energetically connecting as well. So there is this kind of it gives you energy. It makes you feel very alive to be relating in such an open way to the phenomena in the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is it fun working with students? It must be exciting to help people engage in this kind of practice.
It's wonderful. The best thing of all really is when they realize that their world, they've never seen this way before, and that they'll never see the old way again. It's just, and we get letters from people years later who said, I've never seen the same ever since. And we've been in cultures where there's leftover residue of war and difficulties and a certain overlay involved there, and this completely cuts through anything like that.
Yeah, that's a wonderful avenue. I mean, so many of us who have been involved in artistic pursuits always feel like we're amateurs. We're play acting at it, and it seems to me that this turns that whole dilemma on its head.
Well, you're not play acting at something when it's genuine.
Yeah.
You're not imitating. So I think that's you always feel when you're coming up short. Like sometimes, especially, and I think this is true for all of us all along. Sometimes it's harder to be open and available. It's harder, and sometimes it's easier. Mm-hmm. And that can shift, just like the wind. I think that's just how it is. Like some days on the cushion are more challenging than others in terms of peacefulness. But is that the point? I think one good thing about this is that it's a mirror for us. How we are when we go out in the world, and it's a safe mirror too. It's not like we're gonna get feedback about anything. It's just a very gentle situation. You present yourself open to the world, and then whether or not you're really able to do it tells you everything.
Mm. So it really is a heart practice from that point of view.
A heart practice? Mm. Yes, it is.
So tell us, to wrap up, tell us about this photo.
That one? Well, clearly it has a lot of heart. Has a lot of my heart. And I do, it's my mother and it's my daughter, and it was just a moment that just happened just like that, and I just happened to be standing there with my camera, and there's nothing much to say about it.
That's the good part, isn't it?
It says it all. Yeah.
I'd like to thank Julie DuBose for sharing a little bit of her journey of this wonderful book, Effortless Beauty. Photography is an expression of eye, mind, and heart, and invite people who'd like to know more about this wonderful practice to take a look at the book and be in touch with Julie and Miksang. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you so much, Dan.